So Matt Stafford has kind of been on a roll these past couple of weeks. I know they lost last week, but he still put up 364 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. And in this game, he put up 342 yards and 3 touchdowns while completing 78% of his passes. He's having a pretty good season statistically, and in fact, he's on pace for 4,784 yards and 37 touchdowns, which would definitely be one of his better seasons he's had. And it would definitely be a significant upgrade from last season where he definitely had a down year, so it's kind of cool to see him have a bounce back year. But one thing I really liked just about his performance from the Giants was the fact that it didn't start off perfect. What happened was, this is a play on the first drive. Like this play, it's going to be a cover 4 zone, and what's going to happen is it's going to be play action, and then they're going to send a receiver deep right over there. So it's against cover 4, which means that deep routes typically aren't the best because there's several players who could run over and try to make a play on the ball, but at the same time, it could potentially get open, and obviously at the time, Stafford has no idea it's going to be cover 4. I mean, maybe you have some idea, you can kind of see what coverage they're in, but you don't know for a fact what it's going to be. So Stafford's going to take the ball, they fake the handoff and everything, and if you look, his receiver actually does get pretty open. I mean, he's definitely not wide open. There's clearly double coverage, but there is a window where Stafford can try to make this throw, and so Stafford's going to say, hey, let's take a shot. Let's see if I can fit this through that window, throw it deep ideally. Ideally, you'd want to throw it too deep, so that way if either it'll fall incomplete or be a catch. That's kind of the ideal situation, but at the same time, you do have to be a little bit careful, and you definitely don't want to throw it too shallow because that can result in an interception. And you'll see that by the way that this ball was not thrown far enough and gets picked off. So that's what happened on the first drive of the game, and you see it all the time in the NFL, especially with young quarterbacks, but it does happen with veterans like Stafford where they throw an interception early on and it kind of hurts their confidence going throughout the rest of the game. And it can be especially damaging in a situation like this, where clearly part of the mindset for Detroit was, let's throw some passes deep. I mean, the Giants don't have the best secondary, so let's take some shots and see what happens. However, when on the first drive of the game, you take a shot and it results in an interception, that can kind of make you rethink your strategy a little bit. It can make you say, maybe I shouldn't be making those types of throws, but you can't do that. The strategy still makes sense. Yes, Stafford just missed the throw, but he still had a guy open, and more often than not, when he throws the ball deep, it's going to result in catches as opposed to interceptions, so he can't stay away from that game plan, and I give him credit because him and the Detroit Lions coaching staff did not stay away from that game plan. Stafford was not afraid to sling it. Like on this play, it's actually a fun concept that the Giants are going to be running here, where it's going to be a cover 1 blitz. That part is relatively the same, however, they're going to do something a little bit different. So on this play, you are going to send 5 men to rush the passer. However, what's interesting is what those 2 Giants are going to be doing here. Typically, the Giant who's on the line would just rush the passer, and then the one who's further deep would just make sure that he's covering up the tight end. That's typically what you would do here, but that is not what the Giants are going to do here. Instead, what they're going to do is that. The player on the line is going to cover the tight end, and the player who's not on the line is going to rush the passer. So this is basically just an attempt to try to fool the opposing offensive line. That's what they're doing. But for Stafford, he has 2 receivers running those 2 routes right there, which both could potentially get open after this ball is snapped, so that's where Stafford has to look at. And after the ball is snapped, the one thing you will notice is actually unrelated to the top half of the screen, but if you notice right there, the player who's in charge of covering tight end is actually going to pass him off to the safety who's deep. So basically this means that anything deep could potentially get open. And so Stafford, he looks up and realizes that his receiver right over there is getting ready to cut over to the middle of the field, but since the safety who's deep has to go a little bit in to make sure that he's not allowing a player to get wide open, this now means that Stafford could have a player that gets wide open on the top half of the screen, and he is going to have a player that gets open. But watch this perfectly timed throw, perfectly accurate throw, and results in a huge gain. I mean, that's the type of plays that set apart, mediocre quarterbacks from great quarterbacks, is the guys who could just look up, see exactly what has to happen, throw it at the perfect time, and just make an accurate throw. I mean, that's what you like to see. That's just good quarterback play is what that is. This play was also another good one where, once again, it's a cover 4 zone, and what the Lions are going to do to try to combat this is actually a perfect way to beat this type of coverage, where they're going to send a receiver to run that route right there to try to force the Giant who's in charge of covering the bottom right-hand corner of the screen deep. And then they'll send their tight end simply just on a route like that, which will get past the Giant who's in charge of covering the middle of the field, but obviously now that there's a Giant who's covering too far deep, he could potentially get open. That's the way it's supposed to work on paper. But also a very interesting thing is going to happen where there's going to be pressure that happens right in Stafford's face almost instantly. I mean, if you look, there definitely is pressure here. I mean, it wasn't a disaster, but Stafford has to make his decision now. However, there's not really a lot of information for him to be able to make his decision right now. I mean, if you notice, yeah, it kind of looks like the receiver that's running the out route on the bottom half of the screen, his tight end, could potentially get open, but at the same time, you don't know if he could get open. A Giant could definitely make a good read on this one and knock the ball away, but at this point, Stafford kind of just has to trust his guys. And again, this is knowing who you're up against. If you were up against a great defense, you probably shouldn't make this throw. Maybe just throw it away at this point, or try to get some more time, and then you can make a decision. But Stafford knows that the Giants' defense isn't that great, so he can take some more chances. That's what he's going to do, and it's going to work out. They absolutely are easily able to get the first down. Just a smart decision by Stafford. I'd probably call that a dumb decision if you were playing the Patriots defense, but you know what? They're not playing the Patriots defense. So, not just understand what your situation is and how good your players are, but understand who you're up against. Understand your opponent, and that's what Stafford did there. This one's also a fun one where first thing you'll notice is that those two players right there, there's going to be a lion who's in motion and sends a man follows him. That gives them a signal it's going to be man coverage. And it is, as you notice, it's going to be a cover one hole, and for the Lions, that's actually an okay situation for them. I mean, those are the routes that their receivers are going to be running, but obviously just looking at it on paper, the middle of the field is going to be clogged up. So you would think that this play is going to have to take a little bit to develop, and also Stafford he's going to have to make his read and realize which one of his receivers could get the most open. And on these routes, oftentimes what they tell you to do is just go from shallowest to deepest. You want to go to the receiver that's going shorter quickly, and then if he's not open, go to the next guy, and if he's not open, then go to the deeper guy, just simply because those are the guys that are going to get open quicker, so you can make your decision quicker about them. And so that's what Stafford's going to do. First things first, he looks at his receiver who's running shallowest, but if you notice, one of the Giants who was in that area notices that route, and is going to cut in to try to take away that route. So Stafford wanted to hit him, but now he can't because that route's taken out. So now he has to look at his next route, which is right over there, and that play can absolutely work. And especially because if you notice, the Giants have a defensive back who's staying deep, which will probably take away the deep route, at least it could in theory. So clearly the middle route is the one that Stafford is going to want to try to hit here. And then it also helps that he's just going to make an absolutely perfect throw, and once again, another first down. And that's kind of what Stafford was doing all game against the Giants. Just making those quick, smart reads, making very good throws, and making just good decisions. I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's the most important thing in the NFL, is making good decisions. And Stafford, these past couple of games, has just been making good decisions. You know, even his interception that I showed you, that wasn't a bad decision. I mean, it was kind of risky and it didn't work out, but I would still say that was a good decision. You know, you're giving your player a chance to make a play. He just missed the throw, which does happen in football. And one more play I have to talk about, just because it was just a fun play, was this one where it's going to be a pitch to the bottom half of the screen. But, of course, I wouldn't just show a pitch play on a video about Matt Stafford, because what's going to happen then is Stafford is going to run over like that, and basically it's going to go back to Stafford. It's kind of like a flea flicker in a sense. Not exactly, but it's basically a flea flicker, just not a traditional one. Because then what Detroit is going to do is they're going to pull their center actually up to the top half of the screen, so he can block for whichever Giant realizes what's going on first, and, you know, he can take that guy out. Which should give Stafford enough time, as he's going to have a receiver right there running that route right there. So that's the way this play is going to work, and take a look at how well it does work. I mean, the key thing to watch is just that New York Giant right there. He totally believed that this was a running play because, I mean, why wouldn't you? If it was a pitch play, usually that means it's going to be a running play. But because of that, that means that Stafford is going to have a player wide open. He catches the ball, makes an absolutely perfect throw where there's just no chance of that one getting knocked away, and results in a touchdown. And that's just a fun play. You know, I love flea flickers. I love creative plays like this. I think they should be used way more often. I thought that was a great idea to not just have a regular flea flicker, but to actually do it off of a pitch, because I think that makes it so much more obvious that you're going to run the ball, because everyone can see that the halfback has the ball, as opposed to a handoff where sometimes it's oftentimes just kind of hard to tell. And again, that kind of goes back to the knowing your opponent. If your opponent sometimes doesn't make the best reads, well then, hey, every now and then, why not just, you know, use that to your advantage? That's what I thought of Stafford's performance against the Giants. I know the Giants don't have the best defense, but he's still just looking great out there. I thought his fundamentals were fantastic, and so I enjoyed watching it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and as always, thanks for watching.